أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we will continue with our discussion on 10th word, and it's the 10th discussion of the 10th word. So there must be something special today. I'm expecting, extra contributions.
For 10 years?
No, 10th week of the 10th word. But we are doing it probably, not me specifically, but we're doing this Friday discussions. 10 years? 12? Okay, we will continue with the second indication, inshallah. So the 10th word is about the resurrection and the hereafter. First, we started with some parables, 12 of them, like 12 years. You see, there's always the coincidence today. The 12 parables, we studied two friends who find themselves in a city very well organized and governed, and one of them denied first the governance, like he says, I don't think there's a government here or a king. And then the second one proves that there is one. And then the second one says some extra stuff about how this place is actually an indication, a signpost of another realm. And then he tries to convince his foolish friend. And then we started with the second part, which is called introduction. And within this introduction, we will now study, I guess, 12 indications corresponding to 12 aspects, maybe.
4 indications. He's going to make 4 important points.
Okay.
And then we will talk about 12.
Okay, that's true. Okay. And in the first indication, he says, the parables that we studied actually look at the reality. And so, for instance, if you take the two men walking and talking, one of them, the foolish guy who denies everything, he represents, the author says, instinctual soul, nafs, and the other one, the wise guy, he represents the heart. The first man may represent the student of philosophy, and then the second man, it says, may represent the pupils of all-wise Quran. Or the first foolish guy represents the people of unbelief, and the second guy represents the community of Islam. So all this stuff in mind, we studied this first indication, which talk about the existence of the author, the creator. We studied how a book requires an author, and especially if it is a very particular, very special book, where within each letter or within each page, there are some kind of like a combination of different books in each page, and then even in each letter inscribe some text. And when you see such a book, you would say definitely there's an author and artistry behind that. The same way he said, when you look at the universe, you see the same order, same elegance and artistry. And then he also said that the denying one God is like actually accepting infinitely many gods. So that was the first indication in a nutshell. And then, inshallah, we will continue with the second indication. In anybody wants to read the second indication? If only if we had read. He read it perfectly last week.
Red.
Yeah. I told you that today is special. Much.
This book doesn't have, it skips from 64 to 81. Oh, my copy. So I'll probably grab
This one. Do you want to read?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. You can read the second indication.
In our story, we made mention. We're on page 72, second indication. In our story, we made mention of a most noble commander and said that whoever is not blind and sees his decorations and medals will understand that he acts in accordance with the commands of a monarch and is his favored servant. Now that most noble commander is the most noble messenger of God, may peace and blessings be upon him. The sacred creator of so ornamented a cosmos must of necessity have a noble messenger, just as the sun must of necessity have light, for the sun cannot exist without giving light, and divinity cannot be without showing itself through the sending of prophets. Is it at all possible that a beauty of utter perfection should not desire to manifest itself by means of one who will demonstrate and display it? Is it at all possible that a perfection of beauticious artistry should not desire to make itself known by means of a herald that will draw men's gazes upon it? Is it at all possible that the universal monarchy of all-embracing dominicality should not desire Is it at all possible that the universal monarchy of all-embracing dominicality should not desire to announce its unity and eternal besottedness throughout the different levels of multiplicity, and particularly by means of an envoy possessing two aspects? By the two aspects, we mean that he is both the envoy of the realm of multiplicity to the divine court by virtue of his universal worship, and also the messenger of the divine court to the realm of multiplicity by virtue of his closeness to God and being entrusted with his message. Is it at all possible that a possessor of infinite inherent beauty should not wish both to behold himself and to display to others in numerous mirrors the charms of his beauty and the allurement of his fairness? God's messenger is his beloved, making himself beloved of him by means of his worship and holding up a mirror to him. And he is also the bearer of his message, making him beloved of men and demonstrating to them the beauty of his names. Is it at all possible that the owner of treasuries full of wondrous miracles, rare and valuable items, should not wish and desire to display them to men's gaze by means of an expert jeweler, an eloquent describer, thereby revealing his hidden perfections? Is it at all possible that the one who manifests the perfection of all his names in the cosmos by means of artful adornment for men to look upon, so that the cosmos come to resemble a palace decorated with all kinds of wondrous and subtle art, should not also designate a teacher and a guide to the wonders of his creation? Is it at all possible that the Lord of the cosmos should not solve by means of a messenger the complex talisman of the aim and purpose of all the changes that take place in the cosmos, and the riddle contained in the three difficult questions posed by all beings. What is our origin? What is our destination? What is our purpose? Is it at all possible that the glorious Maker who makes himself known to sentient beings by means of his fair creation, and who makes himself loved by means of his precious bounties, should not also communicate to sentient beings by means of a messenger what his pleasure desires of them in exchange? Is it at all possible that God should create mankind in a form predisposing it to suffer the consciousness of multiplicity, but also containing the ability to engage in universal worship, without at the same time wishing to turn it away from multiplicity to unity by means of a teacher and guide? There are numerous other functions of prophethood, each of which is a decisive proof that divinity necessarily implies messengership. Did anyone ever appear in the world more worthy and more in possession of the above-mentioned qualities and functions than Muhammad, the Arabian prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him? Has time ever shown us one more fitting and suited to the rank of messengerhood and the task of conveying God's message? No, by no means. He is the master of all messengers, the foremost of all prophets, the leader of all pure ones, the closest to God of all those who have drawn nigh unto him, the most perfect of all creatures, the monarch of all guides to righteousness. Quite apart from the countless indications of his prophethood deriving from more than 1,000 miracles, such as the splitting of the moon and the flowing of water from his fingers, that all scholars unanimously confirm the supreme miracle of the glorious Quran, an ocean of truth and a book miraculous in 40 different respects, is itself enough to demonstrate his prophethood as clearly as the sun. Since we discussed the 40 different aspects of the Quran's miraculousness in other treatises, particularly the 25th word, we curtail our discussion of the matter here.
So this is again some intro before he started. He's going to tell us about the details of resurrection. And this about, in the metaphor he mentioned before, there was a noble commander, which in truth is referring to the messenger, Prophet ﷺ. And in here, in the second indication, the author is counting quite a number of, if you like, proofs of prophethood. So before we start with that, let us pause for a second and ask the question to ourselves. Do you need prophet, or do you feel the need for a prophet? Because the author, in one after the other, by saying, is it at all possible? Is it at all possible? As if saying that it is impossible to think otherwise. So it looks like in the eyes of the author, prophet is a must. And he is saying this as a must, depending on from various perspectives, but he took evidences from the way the creation is happening, the way the creator is manifesting himself. So he took some proofs or evidences from there. He also talked about miracles, but he said it's required for a human to get to know. It's required for the creator to manifest himself, so on and so forth. So from multiple angles, he talked about that. So just to open up this stage, I think it might be worthy to ask, is this such an important thing, first of all? Like, is it in your world? What do you think? Is it that it must be so? Or, well, it's okay. I don't have any objection with that. If he is there, it's better. If he is not there, oh, well, it's okay. Still, I could figure out my way. So there is
prophet and prophethood located in our understanding? I guess this is in a nutshell.
So one thing I would think would be necessary, like I'm right now in Berkhan's home. So if you go and ask me, Arsad, bring me a pen in this house, from this house, I wouldn't know where to look. So I would be looking here and there. Maybe I might find one pen, maybe I find 100 pens, but I wouldn't know which pen you want. So unless I have guidance either from Berkhan to go and look at this position or at this place, or from you that my pen is over there, bring it from there, I wouldn't know where to look from. So that guidance, I think that guidance is necessary. So prophethood basically is like a guidance for humankind, right? So for them to know what to look for, what your purpose is in life.
So would you expect this to be as a human? Like we are in need of guidance by the owner of the house. But if Birkan has written it somewhere, like in such and such drawer, all the lists of where the pen exists would be found there. So what would you make to think that it must be a human who is going to be that guide for me, but not some text written somewhere? Like, well, it's of course always on the fridge, it's written, right? Come on, I mean, you don't need a person to say where the pen is, right? So in this life, why would you, for example, say that there must be a human teacher who is going to guide me? Why not, well, some book somewhere written, or even just in yourself, listen to your heart. Your creator speaks to you directly, might be another thing. So why specifically a human teacher? Right?
Human connection, maybe.
Human connection.
You can connect more to human beings as opposed to a book or something written. You probably might be able to connect more.
Okay. Yes.
Someone started speaking to you, like within yourself, you might get really scared and freaked out if that happens, if you have no experience with such a voice in your head or speaking to your soul. And so without some sort of example like that probably wouldn't be helpful either. You just wouldn't know.
When you're passing by a poor person and the feeling of, oh, go and give him some money, have you ever freaked out when this feeling come to you? No, right? So that speech is there, and it's a speech, you know, it's a sort of a speech, right? The creator speaks to me, says that, oh, go and help this person.
Does it also have to do with, like, if prophet is a human who's abiding by all the rules that Allah has given, like, if prophet is a human that can do this, he's leading by example, that means we can also do it. So just the human aspect that things are possible, whatever is prescribed, and hence what we can follow.
And in terms of prescribed, what do we mean by that?
So, like, what are the guidelines or some of the, to do things that Allah has given? So if a prophet is doing it with a human being who has the same limitations as we do, if he's able to do it, then that means we can also do it. So I think there's a surety in that way too.
Then God should send the prophet at every times, because the time of the prophet was different than now, and maybe things were possible at his time, like the lifestyle that is not possible to be done. I mean, I feel like we cannot really compare the way we live now and our abilities now, and the way we think or the distractions we have, also the lifestyle 1400 years ago.
That was a bit cry. I was just there. Yeah, you're right. I mean, might be right. You might be right.
No, I'm just saying, if it was possible for them, that doesn't mean it's possible for us, even if we are both humans. Like, we live in different times.
But don't they say, like, if you read Quran, and every different time, it can give you a message in a different way too, like based on the context. So, like, whatever Quran meant for our parents in their time, like if I'm reading now, like the meaning that or the message that you can get from a Quran is very different based on the life stage you are in.
I guess maybe so I guess, yes, now the conversation boils down to two things. Creator speaking to me. Creator can speak to me. Actually, Creator do speak to me when I am passing by a full person. So it's speech of Creator. It is there. But is it being sufficient for me? Like, is it solving my questions? Still, to a degree, yes, but still I have a lot of questions with which I sense like I need more of a speech, like this internal speech that as it's that inspiration. To a certain extent, it tells me something. For example, when you see a sunrise and say that, oh, the one who is rising the sun loves me. I can understand this based on how he's manifest. But this is a partial information, right? Still, I am in need of, I have bigger questions which I'm not able to figure out. So I am in need of guidance. The maker of this book of universe, since I have those questions, unanswered questions, I would say must speak to me because he is the one who gives me those questions. Like he is the one who gave me this empty stomach and he gave the fruits and foods and everything to fill that gap, right? He's the one who gave me this intellect with all those questions and needs. He must also satisfy the answer. I would expect it's rightful. But then, what sort of a speech is this going to be? Because he must be speaking to me in human language as well. Because, like, for example, when we are right now having this communication, we are having this communication in human language. We exchange ideas. Who designed this as such? We didn't make up the language. Languages, again, must be the creation of the creator. So he chose communication channel to be speech. He must speak to me with language. So I would expect that too. So this is how revelation must exist. But then, is it stopping there? Like, for example, is Quran going to be enough for me to understand? This is why I was giving the example of over the kitchen, it says, go to such and such drawer. There are 5 pens or 1 pen, or this is the type of pen you should use. Revelation tells me some answers, right? But to what extent is it answering my questions? Or as a human, would this be, like, can I decouple, let me put it this way, can I decouple revelation, which is like a instruction in speech, from instruction in human example, human form, if you will. This is why even when you're going to buy something or when you're going to get into some job or something, you would like somebody who went through that path before you, who is not only having this, let's say, theoretical knowledge about the matter, but who went through the road himself, who was instructed and went through the road. He has the first-hand experience, who can walk you through the process as a perfect example with the life. This is why I think when we say pen is in such and such location, it sounds very dry. And if I take Prophet as the person who instructs me how to wear, how to sit, how to stand, and just take it as behavioral things in the sense of, oh, do your hair like this or like that. If I take it as such, it sounds very much like, well, you could have written this over the bridge as well. But if I take it as, I mean, just some nonsensical examples, but putting hair like this or that, or wearing like this and that is actually part of living as a human that the creator wants me to live as, saying that I put you in this life for that purpose, and that purpose is best achieved if you live like this, if you behave like this. It's like this behavior type, this life type is how you would understand what it means to be an Arab, what it means to get to know Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, all those names, then it's a totally different thing. That's why Prophet should not be reduced to a person of instructor of do's and don'ts, or even sometimes carrier of the message as if like a postman. the creator could have revealed the book on pages on top of a mountain. We don't need a human to, if the purpose is just to deliver the message, it need not be in the mouth of a person. It could have been written on some pages, which is just revealed on top of a mountain. And the creator says, one morning people wake up and say, oh, we need to go to that mountaintop and pick up the pages from there. And from there on, move on with the pages and read and understand what's going on. But is this something we need to check with ourselves? Is it feasible? Is this how I function? Would I be okay with such an instruction? Or I would like to see how being an abd is practiced in life. If your son dies, if your daughter dies, if your wife dies, if all these happens, yet you are still an abd and you manifest what it means to be an abd, then yes, this is much better than somebody lecturing me about being an abd or writing some text and saying that, understand, I'm explaining this and that. So seeing such a person in action is going to truly convey the message to me. This is why I think, or at least something that we need to question. Prophet, how indispensable or how necessary prophet is for me. The author put it in second indication right after talking about creator. He talked about the creator and he says, look at your creation, look at the creation out there, prophet must exist. He is that certain based on how the creation is out there. As if you go to a school or a university and it says that, look at how the university is structured, there must exist teachers here. This sort of an argument we have seen. Okay.
I don't know if if like this is the same, like the what the prophet said before he died, like I have to translate to English. Like when he said, I leave two things, the book and my family. Yeah. So so you have to stick to both of them. So I think he also emphasized on like that the book is not enough, but also like his family, which means him. Like
the practice needs to come down because otherwise, as you said, every age needs to have a prophet, but he was the last prophet.
Yeah.
Today, still, I need exemplars who is carrying that human. Aisha radiallahu anha, when she defines prophet, she says, Quran. This is a very to the point description of a prophet, actually. His character is Quran because I am in need of a human who is, if you like, Quran in flesh and bone, characterized by Quran. So in this case, prophet was this, but if he was the only, then I'm done because he's dead. So still I am in need of someone, half of it there, half of it here, or here and there. Quran must be characterized in life, and I need to see it in people and get my lesson. Otherwise, what am I going to, how am I going to figure it out? That's why that hadith that you mentioned is important, saying that I live Quran, but Ahl Bayti, sometimes they say sunnah, like a practice. So because Ahl Bayt is responsible for really carrying the sunnah, the practice of Muhammad. So this has to be in my life. This is the duty of prophet.
And whenever we make a distinction between Quran and prophet, I guess we should be careful. There's no Quran without prophet. It's not like, there was a Quran as a book once upon a time, and then came a guy, prophet, who started interpreting it, reading it for us, and so on. This is not the case. It's been always true prophets revelation came. And here also in this text, the author talks about the creator and then prophet. It's not like creator, Quran, and to someone to interpret the Quran, we need also prophet. It's not that way. It comes prophet, the first come prophet, and with prophet comes the revelation. So today we imagine that, because I have books, right? The Quran, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 different Quran, right there. Just because we have them, we assume that, the Quran, this Mus'haf, the book, is something self-sufficient. It's like, it's there. I can just take it and start reading it. But that was never the case. It's been always through lives of people. People learned about Quran. They learned what Quran meant. I mean, you can, of course, read the Quran, look at the dictionary, or just read some translations, and you will get something. But then you are defining the purpose of Quran. It's not like Quran is not sufficient. So we should also be careful with that as well. Like, as if Quran is not enough, we need something extra. No, the Quran is enough. But the Quran comes with a human life. It's the way Quran is revealed and continues to be revealed through the lives of people around us. So without living examples, living Quran, there's no Quran. I think like taking Quran as a book, I'm not sure, I'm making a wild guess. So if Suhail, Saira, Aishanur, or anyone here has any guess whether this is true or not, taking Quran as a book rather than something to believe. My guess, it started with after the Muslim tradition mixed with some philosophical traditions, and then putting too much emphasis on books as a the medium of enlightenment and so on. The reading book is a mark of intellectual mind. So you take Quran and start reading. You should read the Quran, or in Prophet's time, for instance, it was not reading, it was listening. So there must be some connection with the verses. But because at that time, people didn't have this understanding of like the glorifying books, printed material, and so on, they will always take it from people, from Prophet or the companions of the Prophet or their tabi'un and so on, other generations. Like people always put a lot of value to the chain that reaches the Prophet. Like if, for instance, Muhammad Sial tells me something, and I can link this to the Prophet, and I would value it. I would say that it's a tradition of the Prophet, right? So probably in the first a few generations that was so clear that they needed to make this connection. But after, again, this is just a guess, wild guess. After we had this, the fusion with philosophical traditions, we started maybe practicing Quran as just a book. But regardless of the truth of this wild guess, the Quran is always through the words of human being.
I don't know if this is something we may
If I may, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. I think you said it rightly. As we go through Rabiul Awwal and all of the online reflections with Celebrate Mercy and other organizations, a little bit that I have had the ability to join in and listen in. And Brother Umar Suleiman talks about, you are talking about Allah Ta'ala in Quran himself says so many times in almost all surah, and with Sayyid Nur Siddhi's explicative here also, that a person who was not literate and then was given such a heavy divine scripture in and of itself is like a seal that binds the two. Because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam went through the process of revelation of the Quran al-Kareem, and he best understood it the way Allah Ta'ala through Jibreel alayhi salam revealed it to him little by little over a long period of 23 and a half years or so. We, some 1450 years later, are realizing, sorry, I have COVID, I'm getting better with it. We are realizing that that the words are, of course, divine, that the lived example of Quran is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the most part, except where the jurisprudence is needed and consensus is begotten, and maybe there are some ahkams that haven't been yet fully practiced in Prophet's life. Perhaps, maybe, I don't think that there are any, but there might be some. Like he never, I don't know if he ended up giving any qasas to someone, or inheritance wise he didn't have much, but for the rest of the world, Allah Ta'ala gave us all of the dictation, the manual, the truth and the guidelines and the commands to follow. The teaching part of it was through Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and hence Allah Ta'ala in the dialogue between him and Prophet Muhammad, directly and mostly monologue, but we never once see that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained to God directly. Allah Ta'ala always refers, and we saw you look up at the sky, or we, and so Allah Ta'ala was keeping him like Noah and other prophets under his very watchful eyes. But Allah Ta'ala did talk about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's feelings as and when he was going upwards and onwards in his mission to bring Quran's revelations to the people of Makkah and Medina and beyond. So to me, it's inextricable when somebody is going to tell me that this is divine wording by Allah Ta'ala. That doesn't mean that I'm going to not appreciate that it is Allah Ta'ala's words, and in and of themselves, they mean so much, because this is haqq, this is the ultimate truth. And it's linked with the Rahmatul lil Alameen. And hence, that teacher, that when we say Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our master, the other day, one of my, the kids were talking in a group, and nieces and nephews, and the discussion went something like, well, people follow Jesus and they say Jesus our savior, our master. What's wrong with that? We also say that about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so the other day I read an ayah where Allah Ta'ala says, to each of you, the Abrahamic traditions, I have given you your books, the earlier scriptures, and I've given you the guys, the people, the men. Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was preceded by Hazrat Isa, and then Hazrat Musa, and then Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam, and Hazrat all of the other Anbiya who got the scripture, the gospel, the Torah, the Bible, and then the Quran, Injil and the Quran, Zabur and the Quran. So I think that without the said prophets and their life stories, and especially in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life, the lived demonstration and illustration of Quranic commandments and holding on to them. Like, for instance, when Allah Ta'ala says directly to us and to the people around Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that Samina wa Atana. Essentially, he is saying this, that by virtue of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you are to not transgress my commands, and also his, because he's my chosen messenger at the time to convey all this to you. So in my mind, it's very clear that the Quran's explanation and demonstration is indeed through Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So anytime in my lifetime I'm going to be talking about Quran, I'm going to imperatively be talking about Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Jazakallah khair.
وإياك. Yes, alhamdulillah. I just want to emphasize one point, maybe re-emphasize. What is my biggest issues in life? Death. Death is happening. Joys are ending. I have this eternal desire. So everything, I mean, if there's going to be any solution, this problem needs to be solved. So this is what I would be looking for when there's prophet and he is going to exemplify something. He should be exemplifying this first and foremost. So when we say, let's say rules, regulations, sort of a thing, whatever he embodied must be answering that question. Did he embody prayer? It must be answering that question of mine. Because like it might be understood that if Prophet didn't teach us how to do the prayer 5 times like this, that way, it's just being too much of a, I mean, it could have been a piece of paper on which movements of prayer would be written down, and then we would just do it. Or it's saying that, okay, that time of the day, a little bit of an explanation maybe, but this is what it is. I mean, if Prophet was only, I mean, when we talk about rules, regulations, if it is a laundry list of do's and don'ts, and this is what I would need Prophet for, again, which again, actually is going to be tomorrow's discussion's topic, but it would sound like reducing religion to just an outwardly appearance, and Prophet depicting this outwardly appearance. Prophet must be the person who lived the meaning through that outwardly appearance. So one should not be separated from the other. This is why that exemplary life is embodying whatever problems I'm going through. I need to look at the answers in the Prophet along these lines. Otherwise, because like from the past, whenever the topic of Prophet comes out, they say, well, in the Quran, it doesn't say how many times or how many rak'ahs the prayer is going to be. We learned this through Prophet, therefore we need Prophet. But the Creator could have written those if it's about those fiqh rules, and we are talking about rules in the sense of do's and don'ts, like laundry list of things. He has revealed that many verses, just adding a few more wouldn't be too much of a big deal if this is just the duty we are putting or expecting from the messenger. But if you are talking about he embodied what it means to be the praying in the battlefield, doing prayer with jama'ah, not even just abandoning the prayer like it's life or death, battle of life or death situation. Forget about abandoning the prayer. He did not even abandon the praying with jama'ah. So for example, what does this tell me about doing the prayer with jama'ah? What was there that life and death situation, not only for him, but also for the Islamic community? It's a life or death for the message itself. Still not abandoning a apparently a rule which we would consider today as sunnah, not even fard or anything with our classification today. What is the importance of that? What meaning must be there in, for example, praying in Jama'ah, that Prophet didn't skip it during the battle of Badr? So this is the gist of the matter. It's not that, oh, we must do prayer with congregation and we learned this from the messenger, because this sounds so dry and does not have too much of an effect in my life. But to the extent that I see that, oh, this was the importance that was given in there in such a circumstance, so what is the really message of praying with congregation? So I need to then look at his life and see where it fits, and then say, what does it mean in my relationship with my creator that it is manifested like that?
Any comments? Any other questions, comments? We have like a 10-15 minutes.
Points that were just really,
A little bit louder, please.
the life of Rasulullah also, it's just like the context. It's like it's the context in which you read the Quran through that additional context. So there are people who are like of the opinion that the Quran itself can be interpreted in many ways. But if you actually look at the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you see that there are meanings that are supposed to be defined. So the movie I just read mentioned like this idea of going from multiplicity to unity. So it isn't up for like everything isn't up for interpretation. Even just talking about the example of Salah. Like I've heard from people who basically say Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is no longer here. So it's up to us to read the Quran and interpret it for ourselves. So they say, like, Salah doesn't mean you have to pray doing rak'ah, doing sujood. I can just pray in my heart. That's Salah, and that's abiding by the Quran because that's my interpretation. So that's the idea of this confusion, that if you take Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam out of the equation, you're back to multiplicity, you're back to confusion. It's up to everybody else to interpret for themselves what that means, and that can lead to a lot of issues in reality.
What do you mean with the issues? A lot of issues in reality. Do you mean,
I think this even goes back to the point you were making about like philosophy, and for me, I think like that brings me to the idea of like self-learning, and the idea that knowledge comes from me inside my head. I'm the source of knowledge. I think about things and I create meanings. And so this is the idea that I can read the Quran and create those meanings for myself. And now I've created what Islam really is. And if you don't have Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the context of his life as the practical exemplified Quran in reality, then it is very possible for you to create many meanings, and meanings that have very different results. So that is what I'm talking about, is the challenge.
any comments about that? When we look at the text, there's one interesting part. Is it at all possible that a possessor of infinite inherent beauty, this part, shouldn't wish both to behold himself and to display to others in numerous mirrors the charms of his beauty and the allurements of his fairness? God's messenger is his beloved. making himself beloved of him by means of his worship and holding up a mirror to him. And he is also the bearer of his message, making him beloved of men and demonstrating to them the beauty of his names. So beauty of his names, love, kind of relationship, loving type of relationship. So I guess when it comes to creation and understanding the creation, or reading Quran and trying to extract some meanings. So if we mean with meaning, like simply, I read the Quran and I'm just loading each word with some definitions. Salah means this, I don't know, Ikra means this, and so on and so forth. It's not that much, at least to me, much of an interest. Like, I don't enjoy that much, right? This kind of, let's say, practice. What I'm more or most concerned is that whether the one who adorns me with these beautiful things, all this beauty around me, whether he loves me or not, whether I am loved or not, because that's concerned me more than what this specific word means in Arabic or in any other language. And the Quran is valuable to the extent I can use it to become the beloved one. The God loves me, and now the Quran fulfilling its purpose. And so the interesting, he says the God messenger is his beloved, making himself beloved of him by means of his worship. So through his life, through demonstrating how a human being should be, how should a human being act, think, devoting himself to something like worship, with every action of his glorifying the Creator. This is something I need of. Like, I want to see this, how it happens, how it is possible. Reading just a book and then trying to understand this book wouldn't fulfill such a purpose. And I wouldn't see what it means to be loved by God. I can, write poems or, try to explain you with my, sugar tongue, but it wouldn't help. I have to live it. I have to, and if I want to learn it, I have to learn it through life, through experience, by seeing it, by co-experiencing it with others. So praying in congregation. And it's just one example. So creation is, through creation, Creator teaches me who he is, like he is merciful, he is knowledgeable. Through creation, I get to know all these. And among the creation, the most important creation, let's say, looks like human, because human is, all the names are being manifest in human, as if human is the focal point of the creation. The Creator gave whatever he gave to animals, he gave to humans. Whatever he gave to plants, he gave to humans. Like, as if human is at the core, at the center of this creation. But there's Birkan, there's Atik, there's all different types of people. Manifestations of names are at different levels and across everyone. So among mankind, the best manifestation
where does the creator manifest the best? Like, show me a person. When I look at him, I will say he is the perfect, if you like, mirror of my creator to me. When I look at him, I would get to know my creator the best. He reminds me, or he teaches me the creator at the utmost level. When I say mirror, I'm using in the metaphoric sense, as it reflects names of my creator to me. So that person would exist, must exist, because I see its traces here, like this person, that person, this person, showing me of my creator to a certain degree. But a person who shows me my creator to the utmost degree must exist, because the purpose of this existence is to tell me about my creator. So there must be an exemplary person in utmost perfection who is going to show me or tell me about my maker. This must be, such a person must exist. This is how the author was saying. Do you see anyone other than Muhammad والسلام, who is more worthy of that position? Such a person must exist, but the question is who that person is. It's not a question of such a person must exist or not. It must exist, but who is that person?
So I guess one thing that we should be highlight what you said is we know our creator through the creation, through his beautiful names as they manifest in the creation. And so when we say that, it may sound like, oh, you just go and study the plants or the trees or animals or stars, and you will know about the beautiful names of your creator. But for us, for human beings, it's not that way. Like, most of the names, and as you said, at the utmost level of each name, only through human beings. So every creation reflects the beautiful names of the creator in different ways. And some creatures are silent when it comes to certain names. At least for us, like from rocks or from stars, you don't read the beautiful name of the the beautiful one, for instance, maybe, right? At least first, when you first look at it. If you don't see the beauty in the rock, if you are not specialized in studying rocks, for instance, or the compassion, you see all these names in everywhere, for sure, even in the rock, like the one who giving such a beautiful shape to this rock must be the compassionate one, even loving this rock, you would say. But to some degree, when you see the same name manifested through an action of a mother through her child, you would say, okay, now I know my creator with the name of the compassionate one more than I knew with the rock. So I guess the human beings for us have this special place to know about our creator. That's one thing. Also, maybe another thing is that even reading the universe in that way, like when I will look at the universe, I will look at the stars, and will learn something about my creator. We take this approach, like this method, we take it as granted, as if without the prophet and his revelation, the way prophet lived, we already would be able to look at the stars and try to learn about the beautiful names of our creator. We do it because we learned it from the prophet. The most we would do, and when we look at the history, this is what we see, or when we look at ourselves before meeting the prophetic message. So for instance, when I look at my life, there's a certain time where I met with the prophetic message. Before that, looking at the stars, I wouldn't think about the beautiful names of my creator. I wouldn't. Even if I knew that there must be a creator, of this universe, looking at the universe with the method of La ilaha illallah, like everywhere I look, I try to read it in the name of my creator. This is something I learned after I met with the prophetic message. Before that, I wouldn't do it. After we learn this method and after we, understand that the creation is nothing but the mirror of beautiful names of the creator, but we pretend as if, we came to such an approach through our minds. Oh, because I'm a human being, I'm so clever. I came up with this method. Wherever I look, I will read the beautiful names of my creator. This is something inherent to me. Or, I learned it by just reading Quran. Billions of people reading Quran, and you hear such approaches, only a few of them, let's say a handful of them. Or billions of people are human beings, and the majority of them look at the universe and just deny the creation and creator. So it seems that just being a human or even just being a Muslim is not enough. You have to take Prophet and his lineage as your teacher. Otherwise, you wouldn't have even such an approach. You would just memorize some names of the creator because it's written in the Quran, and that's it. Reading the universe in the name of the creator is something we learn from the prophetic life. Oh, Suhail, sorry, we made you wait, and we can conclude with you, inshallah.
Assalamualaikum. Oh, I won't take too long. It's interesting in this section in that previously in the first indication, he's talking about God's unity and how everything points to it and demonstrates it. How can you be denied this reality? It's as evident as the sun. And here in the second indication, he's making mention of how this man, he is essentially representing God's unity upon earth. In other words, he demonstrates it or expresses it in his sort of thoughts and actions and behaviors. He presents his conclusion or his realization back to the absolute one, and therefore by doing so he acts as a sort of messenger for me. He informs me this is what humanity is, this is what my humanity is about. It's interesting in this section, he doesn't make any mention, honestly, of any sort of action the prophet does, what he does, how he does it, because like when I think about it, and like what you guys were talking about or as before, in some sense, like at least people who grew up in a sort of Muslim background and were educated in traditional like upbringing, there's a sort of secularization of the prophet as a figure. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Like I could growing up, I could tell you more about what the prophet looked like physically, because there is the characteristics or the shemal, or like the what he essentially looked at. It was just physical characteristics. As if only as I got older, I realized, like, what does that even mean to me? Does it, like, is the prophet a physical being such that I need to be concerned with that at this point? Like, what am I going to do with the fact that he's of medium height and he's of fair skin and he has this long hair and this, that, and the other? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? How is that relevant in my life? It's not, because there's a secularization, honestly. Like, that has nothing to do, as Norsi's pointing out here, has nothing to do with God's unity. Like, I don't see where is the prophetic figure and it relates to God's unity in that, in his physical description. With all due respect, if anybody has an issue, that's fine, but there's no relevance to me in my life about his physical description and God's unity. Nor is it in I remember during Ramadan, like, just, I always think back about this, is that I would go to the mosque, and I'm sure many of you have gone to the mosque, your own upbringing if you grew up in a Muslim background. Like I would always hear the imam and say, "Oh, you should eat 3 dates. You should break your fast with 3 dates." Because the Prophet did so. I'm thinking like, I would never question, because like God forbid it's sacrilegious to question anything with the Prophet or Islam. But I would always think, I was like, what is that? Like, why? Like, what's the point of this? Like eat 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. Who cares? How is this relevant? It makes no sense. This all seems irrational to me. Only then, like as I again sort of got out of that sort of steel trap, so to speak, that sort of suffocating sort of mindset, because again, secularization of the Prophet. 3 dates has nothing to do with God's unity. If you see it as the way like these imams would see it, until like you should eat 3 days because the Prophet is so, which is fine. That's fine. I mean, if you want to emulate the Prophet, but what does it mean? I think as Yusuf was pointing out, what does it mean to pray on the battlefield when you don't have to? Like he's doing it for some reason. Like what's the reason behind it? Like have I thought about it? Has this person thought about it? Like what is his sort of perception of the world? Is he thinking about the unity of God in that moment? And what some insight I took away from his 3 dates, or why he loved odd numbers in general, I realized maybe he likes odd numbers because odd numbers points back to God's unity, in that even numbers would be something of the sort of, there are pairs in this world, and so that looks to sort of causality, or the idea that there is no sort of causer of all effects, and 3 is sort of an imbalance in that sense. It points to the fact that 1 or 3 or 5 or 7, which is, he was always enamored by odd numbers, and that not there is one God but not 2 there. And so that's what I took away from it, is that he would always remember some sort of aspect of God's absoluteness through, and for him odd numbers was the way to do it, and that's what I took away from it. But there's no mention of that, because the hadith are just that, hadith. They're not the sunnah. I mean, people, like, I would mistake it all the time, because that's what people tell me, is that you read Sahih Bukhari, Kutub al-Sitta, the six great books of hadith literature, and they're the sunnah. No, they're not the sunnah. They are some man's representation of the Prophet, maybe of his action, maybe of his words, but they don't necessarily tell you what he's saying, or what he's thinking, or how he sees things, or what he feels at all. I mean, the most famous of which is, he never even tells people, as Yusuf pointed out, like, he never tells people how to pray. He says, pray as you see me pray, because even he gets it. Even he understands, like, he's not there simply to reduce himself to, like, you do X, Y, and Z, and you will be saved. And to me, this is why I like reading Nursi, is because Nursi doesn't. That's not his point. He's not going to tell you the Prophet did X, Y, and Z. You should do this, but he's telling you some sort of deeper inward aspect of his reality. Why? What is he representing? What does he signify in his actions? How does he demonstrate that in his actions? And as importantly, do I take the way in the way I do when I do try to emulate the Prophet? Like, not just only physically, but in maybe those physical acts of worship, possibly, is my sort of frame of reference the same? Is my sort of aim the same is my aim towards God, and my realization that I'm, representing all of creation potentially, if I'm aware of it, most of the times really not, but all of creation, and presenting my conclusion on their behalf towards him, because I speak for them. I'm a Khalifa, just like everybody else is. And that potentially I too can convey that message to others, or present that message or my understanding to others. That's prophetic. So that's what I wanted to say, is that I get very irritated nowadays, like when people say the Prophet did this and that, and make absolutely no mention of God or his unity, because it's not relevant in that sort of that paradigm. He becomes secular. He becomes a good man. He becomes a moralist, an ethicist, a humanist. I mean, so what? I mean, there are a bunch of people like that, you know. Christians say Jesus was. The Jews say, you know, Solomon was, Moses was. You know, people have their own moralists and ethicists today. They say Gandhi was, or any figure you can think through human history. What's the point? Who cares? He's just another man in history that's come and gone. But Nursi presents it in a way that shows that he's not like any other man. At least no other man, at least prophetically speaking, who's been documented in such a way or presented in such a way. That's what makes him unique. That's what makes him not just any human being, but I guess the human being.
Unique to the extent or in the sense that every action of him represents a truth about the creator. So his actions are not for the worldview or worldly life, but for knowing the creator.
So I think that it makes sense to say prophet teaches us how to worship. What does how to worship means? How to be an abd, because we are small pharaohs, especially in this age. Trust yourself, believe in yourself, believe in your strength. This is how it's being presented. But prophet, by, for example, praying in the battlefield, just the fact that he is choosing to worship in that battlefield is actually teaching us what it means to be servant or slave or abd of the creator. So he was depicting what it means to be, not to be this self-sufficient man who imagines to be, oh, I am sufficient, I am strong, but rather in all senses, I am relying on my creator. This is embodied, this is exemplified. So I think this is what it should mean, that we learn worshiping from the prophet. It's not only about standing up, sit down. I mean, it's part of the education, but not, this may be a fraction of it. What does it mean to be an abd? How do I learn how to be a slave of the creator? This is what it means to really learn how to do worship.
Jazakallah khairan. We are out of time. But let's finish here, inshallah, conclude here. Until next week. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Wa akhiru da'wahum anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Al-Fatiha.